statement is there's only one way to God, and we record it just so you can enjoy watching yourself later. But don't worry about that. Just say whatever you think, and then I'll just ask you why and probe in a little bit. That's the sort of the epistemology aspect. What are the reasons why you think that? And then ideally have you respond to each other. You both being Catholic, you may have more or less to challenge one another, but that's just fine, whatever. So there's only one way to God. You know where you gonna go?
It could be like an opposing. Do you want me to be opposing?
No, do whatever you think. Do whatever you think.
Okay.
We'll stick with that. And then if we need to, I'll play some devil's advocate.
Okay.
All right?
Okay,
All right.
I could definitely do opposing.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll do that. We'll see. So strongly disagree to strongly, or agree to strongly disagree,
Okay.
or anywhere in between. Do you know where you're going? Nadia and what? Say, I'm sorry.
Ava.
Ava. Okay.
Okay.
Do you know where you're gonna go?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, ready, set, go. Oh, okay. Well, we won't need to then. Excellent. So you're both Catholic, but
I've got to think about it. Yeah.
okay. All right. You think about Ava. I'll go with you first. You strongly disagree. Strongly or just disagree? Strongly.
I'm gonna say strongly.
Okay.
Disagree.
All right. Why do you strongly disagree? There's only one way to God.
Just because there are so many millions of different stories you hear. Like, I've gone on retreats before. I've been going to church since I was a kid, and you just hear so many different ways that people have come to experience God. Whether it's starting from like rock bottom or being consistent throughout your whole life, but it's a million different journeys, and everybody's journey is different.
Okay. So would you say that's primarily your reason there is something to do mainly with experience, people's personal testimony about knowing God in some way, shape, or form?
Yeah, just about that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll come back to it. Ava. Thank you, Ava. Nadia.
Okay.
What do you think? Why do you agree? You agree?
I don't know. Maybe
Maybe strongly disagree? Okay.
I believe that there's only one way to God because you have to have love to want to go to God, and
Okay.
you have to want to go to God. You can't just one day. I mean, you could just one day wake up and be like that, but you have to be willing to do all of it. So willingness is the one way that you can get to know God.
Okay. So heart disposition, people don't want naturally, don't want to go to God. Okay.
Kind of okay, so say somebody's having a really bad day and they just want to be like, oh my God, why would God do this to me? Or why would God take away that person that I love so much? And then you just got to think about how you have to be willing to trust that God did this for a reason, and God knew that this needed to happen for you to learn or experience, or
That's all right.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, let me just pause for a second. Ava or Nadia, do you guys have responses to one another? So you're in different spots. Those particular reasons may or may not overlap a lot, but what did you think of the other person's response?
There's a lot of valid points there,
What mainly comes to mind as far as a valid point?
Just the wanting to be close to God and stuff like that. But I think it's, the spiritual warfare of it too plays a factor of the devil is constantly trying to keep you from God, and that you have to fight against that too. And it's kind of everybody has a different fight that they have to deal with in their lives.
Okay. Nadia, did you have thoughts for Ava's answer?
I agree with Ava.
Yeah?
That was brilliant. No, she makes a valid point. I feel like there are a lot of things that go against, totally forgot what she just said.
Spiritual warfare.
Yeah.
Well, let me
Valid.
ask this, because you're on different positions as far as your conviction about there being one way to God. Do you have a particular, argument or reason in response to the other person for why you think they're in the wrong spot? Because it's not going to be both true and not true, right? There's not both one way to God and not one way to God.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I have a question.
Okay,
How
that makes
do
good.
you just go to God unwillingly? How would you do that? Don't you have to be willing to do it?
Do you have to be willing to go to God?
I think that's true, yeah. that's just in human nature, is just that we were separated and that we have to fight to go back to him. I
Okay.
guess so. Yeah.
Okay. I'm trying to find the point of disagreement here. Do you have questions for Nadia, perhaps, Ava? Because she thinks there's only one way to God.
Right.
You don't think there's only one way to God.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just, what exactly do you think is that one way? Is it just
Oh, that's a good question.
like, I don't know.
Yeah, what's the one way? There you go. That's the
Okay.
question.
I grew up in like private schools, like Catholic private schools, so I grew up like going to church every single day.
Mhm.
I'm like, I guess it's just more of a, I don't know, I feel like I keep saying willingness, but you have to be willing to take God. Like, you have to be willing to.
So you have to be willing. How do you become willing? Maybe that'd be the question there.
By-
There's only one way. What's the one way to become willing, maybe?
Maybe like allowing yourself to be like faithful to Him.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
I guess I understand that, and how sometimes it's just like a flip of a switch, and there's really only one switch that's there, and that's just the yes or no, I do accept or I don't accept. So
Okay.
I can understand where you're coming from with that. Yeah.
The movie I saw.
Do you girls, do you think, well, I'll just ask it both. Do you think that Muslims, there was a way to get to God through Islam? You both said you were Catholic at the beginning.
Right.
Obviously, I would guess, Nadia, say no, but I'm just curious. What do you think about, you're Catholic, but is there
I-
multiple religious ways?
I think whatever floats your boat.
Whatever floats your boat.
I believe in my religion, you can believe in yours. That's,
Okay, is that a way to God then?
if you believe it is, then that is your way.
Okay. You do not sound like you're standing and strongly agree, Nadia. Oh, by the way, you can change.
I agree for myself.
Oh,
that
okay.
it's one way. But if other people might agree that it's one way in their religion, so
So do you think that those claims, well, this is on the backside of the board, in fact, do you think that claim is a claim of actual truth about the nature of access to God? Or just a personal belief? I don't want to put words in your mouth. That sounds like what you're saying to me. Is it just a nice religious belief you have, quote unquote? More akin to, you like this band and someone else doesn't? Or is it an actual claim of truth about the way to God and other ways are not the way to God? I'm asking you because you're over here, and I'll go over there in a second.
I believe. Okay, I grew up in a very strong Catholic household, so I would say from like my experiences that my religion would be the only way.
Okay.
And I would say, like, because I'm Catholic, so there's only one way to get to God, and that's by learning the religion and the stories and
Okay.
following the Ten Commandments. And
Okay. Do you think that's then true for all people? Or just what you happen to have been brought up in?
it could be both, to be honest. Yeah, because I was brought up in it, but other people, like the Muslim religion, they were brought up in their religion, so they believe probably strongly that's their right way. So I believe that whatever you need to do to feel close to God, then you should do it.
Okay. Ava, do you have thoughts on that?
Kind of. I guess just what I believe is, I have my God, but I also do believe that God comes in many forms for many different people, and that's what, all sorts of different religions are, and beliefs and spiritualities and stuff like that. So I kind of understand kind of what she was saying, with just like, I have my God, you have yours, and everybody's beliefs are as equal as the others. Because in the end, if you are a good person, I believe if you are a good person, you'll end up in like the right place when you pass on and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right, morally.
Yeah.
Morally speaking, if you are a good person and you care about the environment, people, and everything, and you believe in God and you hold yourself to a certain standard, then you will end up where you need to be.
So let me put this out, because you two are sounding similar right now. at least to me. Let me just put this as an example. So since I mentioned Islam, it's just the easier comparison. Muslims claim that Jesus is not God, that he's not the Messiah, that he's not the one who has made atonement for sin, that the only way to the Father is by me, Jesus says in the Bible. Muslims think that's not true. That's not who Jesus is. They respect him. They think he's a prophet, but he's not God. He's not the Messiah. Where Christians think the exact opposite of that, you might say. And I think he is God. He is the Messiah. He's the only way to God through, you need atonement by the death, resurrection of Jesus to pay the penalty for your sins. Muslims and Christians completely disagree on that. And Orthodox historic Christians and Muslims believe that belief is very, very, very important. It's not just a particular thing they happen to disagree on. So what do you think of that as far as the multiple ways to God? The challenge is essentially those two things are different. Can they both be true? What do you think?
Wow. I mean, I don't really know.
Yeah?
It's definitely a very complicated subject, very broad, lots of different arguments that could contradict each other, but weirdly also support each other. It's definitely very complicated, stuff like that, you know?
Uh-huh.
But I don't know. I just feel like personally, everybody can believe that they're right, and what matters to me is that I feel right, and with my life, and that makes me feel like I'm doing something okay and like correct with my life.
Okay. Do you believe that it's important to be right, to believe what is true, as opposed to just feeling what's true? You know what I'm saying? Like, does it matter to you that there's truth that you believe that's external to you, or only inside your own head or heart is what you believe? Does that make sense?
Well, isn't that like the definition of faith? Is just trusting that you believe what is to be correct?
Yeah, because there's no right religion. I mean, if there
Well,
was
that's the question.
well, okay.
Statement.
Let me defend what I'm
All right,
saying here.
yep.
There is no proven right religion.
Okay.
But if you look back in the Bible and you look back at everything, I believe that my religion's right,
Okay.
right? And then somebody will be like, oh no, my religion's right because of this and this, and then it can just go on forever because you can't prove which one's right.
So you don't.
But there are a lot of stories about like the Eucharist that like bled in church one day, or what's another story? You're Catholic, you have to know a couple.
Various
There's a lot.
miraculous type things.
Yeah, and like how the
okay.
bones of the saints, they're still here. Or isn't it Saint Thomas that is, no. There is a saint that is still preserved perfectly. So
Well, the question I think underneath that I'm sensing from both of you, which is sort of interesting given your seemingly different positions, but is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, it just is my culmination, is that you don't think that there is maybe either access to actually know what's true, or just to put it this way, that you think faith, as you mentioned, Ava, is something to just inside you and for you personally, not a claim about what's actually true about God. Is that accurate, that second one? Which, Nadia, I would put you not, I wouldn't say that to you since you were standing here at the beginning, but it's sounding like what you're saying. I just wanted to make sure that's accurate. Maybe, I mean, technically, Ava, you said that, so I'm putting words in Nadia's mouth maybe, but.
I don't know. I do believe there's only one way to God.
Okay.
I do.
Yeah.
But I also would never disagree with somebody else saying something, because personally I feel like I'm doing what I need to be doing.
Okay.
But if somebody asked me for my opinion about it, I would tell them, like, yeah, I think being Catholic is like the right way to go. I think it's the right religion. Come to church with me, see it for yourself, like figure out if you like it and if you believe it also. But they could fire back at me and be like, hey, yeah, come to my religion, check it out, do this, but I probably would not go. So
You have any other thoughts, Ava? We can move to wrap up here in a moment. And
No, I mean, yeah, I'm cool.
let me one last little thing, and then we'll close. Just because we don't want to have it go too long. This is not uncommon, especially for Gen Zers. Gen Z, right? You guys are Gen Z. I always forget the letters. It sounds to me like both of you are in some kind of camp underneath the category of relativism, some version of it, which is to say everything is relative. There is no one set truth. And this could be wrong. You may not actually think this, but
Right.
it sounds to me, even though you're in different spots, that you're both subscribing to some version of relativism, which is to say you can believe it, but what you believe about what's true is mostly about just what you choose personally to believe, and it shouldn't or doesn't have any kind of imposition or claim on other people. Does that sound accurate? Would you say you believe something like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you can't just push somebody, like a religion on somebody.
Uh-huh.
You can't just like, here, in your face. Like,
Yeah.
you can't do that.
Okay. Well, historically, I'll just say this. I mentioned Muslims and Christians. Historically, Muslims and Christians, and many today still, are not in that camp of underneath relativism. They are actually, not that they would necessarily push it per se, but do actually claim, we believe X, Y, and Z. We believe Jesus is the way, the only way to God. And we believe that's true, not just something that we think. And so it's interesting. This is part of the exercise, is to get people to think and consider the active beliefs going on inside their own heads. And so it's not uncommon. We've done this with a number of people, and that seems like where you're both at, maybe with somewhat different emphases. But so something to think about there. Christians certainly do claim historically that Jesus is the way, and that that's actually necessary to believe for everyone, and that others are wrong. Which in our culture, again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but in our culture, to say that someone is wrong feels to us instinctively, I think, like arrogant or prideful.
Yes.
You're saying I'm right, I'm saying I'm right, and you're wrong. But historically, it's not the case. I think actually it's inevitable to be claiming one thing or another. You think a truth about the nature of reality. Well, anyways, Thursday night we'll be talking about this again, right in the market, on the market stage. Thursday at 5:30, just during supper. We'll be making a presentation why we think there's a chalk right there. Why we think there actually can only be one way, a logical case for it. Explain to me if you're interested in coming to that. Well, any last comments or questions for each other?
What do you believe?
Oh, all right. The latter, what I just went over, historical Christianity. I think I'll start where I ended there, actually. I think it's inevitable to be making a truth claim about reality. And so even to say, for instance, that everyone can be right is itself a claim, a really, really large claim about knowledge. You're saying, I know that this is the way things are, that everyone can be right. So I happen to think Jesus is the only way. I think that's what the Bible teaches. It's what the historic Christianity, the Catholic Church included, has always taught. And that it's actually necessarily loving for Christians to believe that. It's not an arrogant thing. We're claiming and believe that that's the case, just like the Muslims believing something different, or the relativist is making a claim about the nature of knowledge. And I think that's good. I actually think Jesus is really, really good and necessary for joy and a right relationship with God. So I think there's only one way. I would strongly agree, personally.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I feel like I can agree with you there. So,
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I feel like we're on a common ground.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts there,
Come
Ava?
to this side.
Yeah. Yeah. Come and Joe.
I feel Jesus is my only solution. but
Okay. But not necessarily for other people.
Yeah, maybe it might be different for other people.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I just love that you think that.
Okay. Well, thanks, ladies. Let's just end there if that sounds good. Ava
Yeah.
and Nadia, thanks very much.